How you doing, guys? Ricky from Average Skate Reviews, and in this one we're going to be doing a first impressions on the Onsra Black Carve. So this board is probably more well known, made by Fabi from YouTube, if you know who he is. But essentially in this one I'm just going to give you my thoughts, my first impressions of what it's been like to ride this board. But before we jump into the video, if you haven't liked and subscribed, make sure you do. But yeah, let's jump into the video. So Fabi's board, or the Onsra Black Carve, my first impressions, I've been really excited about riding this one just based on what I've seen online, the speed that it goes, the range that it can go. It all looked like good stuff to me. And my first impressions, my first ride on it, I was a little bit not 100% sure, just based on the fact that this board has got quite a short wheelbase on the deck, so it is very, shall we say, maneuverable. So going from a longer board to a shorter wheelbase there, I definitely felt the difference, but that's not a bad thing. It just took a little while to adjust to, but now I'm actually finding it really great to ride. So in terms of like the way that the deck feels for me and the impressions of the deck that I got, my first impressions of the board is that I'm not 100% keen on the deck itself. I don't really like the big logo in the middle there. And I also am not keen on the fact that it's been painted black. I would have much preferred to see a bamboo deck as standard rather than it be covered with black paint, but that's just personal opinion. But in terms of actually riding the board and going out and about and town with it, it's performing and acts really great and it feels good to stand on. There's not a lot of flex to it. It's quite a stiff deck as well, so maybe a little bit of flex to it would have been nice, but with that battery enclosure that it's got on there, because it's got a really nice carbon fibre battery deck on there, on the bottom side of the board, that's probably the reason why you're not getting any flex in it. But in terms of the way that it's ridden, for me, I'm finding it so much fun. This board has just been great for me. The speed that I'm able to achieve on it, I've hit 50 kilometers an hour, which is fairly fast. It does feel fast. I love the sound of the board makes. And one of the biggest things that I'm really impressed with about this board is the wheels on it. I saw these wheels quite a while ago and I was debating on whether to buy some to put on my other board, but I didn't make the jump and I didn't purchase them. So I'm glad to see that those wheels are on this board, and for me they've been great. They're great for going sort of off terrain a little bit. They handle the bumps and lumps really well. Even a bit of off-roading, going over grass and stuff, they handle really well. And for me as well, because of how maneuverable this board actually is, being able to just kick it out and slide it about and just have fun with it, I've really been enjoying it. So another welcome addition that's really nice to see on this board is the fact that Onsra has put double Kingpin trucks on it. So I'm a big fan of double Kingpin trucks. You'll either love them or you hate them. You do need to spend a bit of time tweaking them to get them to the way that you like him to ride and your type of style. But for me, double Kingpin trucks these days are a must-have, so it's a really great addition to see that they've included these on this board. So touching on the range a little bit, we've taken it out a few times now just to gauge the board, see how it performs and what we like and what we dislike, so we could get this first impressions video out to you. And on one of the rides that we managed to take it out, we've done about 10.8 miles and I still had 30 to 40% battery life remaining on the board itself. So in terms of the way that this board's actually going to perform when it comes to range, I can safely say that you're probably going to be able to achieve anywhere between 15 and 20 miles. That's not obviously an accurate number. That is just something that I'm basing upon what we've used so far. Everything that we talk about in this impressions video will be covered fully in the full review. And also I'd just like to mention that this is a previous version of board that they're currently shipping out with. So the newer version does have some slight changes, some slight tweaks to it with smaller logoing, etc. So this is a pre-production, or shall we say the previous version of the board that's currently shipping. So yeah, that's about all I've got to say really for the impressions video. I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to go in too depth about the whole board and the experience for me, but you can probably tell the way that I'm talking about it. I'm super pumped for it. I'm super excited about it, and I'm actually loving riding this board. So now I'm going to just hand you over to Chris so he can give you his feedback and thoughts and impressions on this board. So I'll catch you in the next one, guys.
Before you come off though, do you prefer riding this to your GTR Carve?
He's put me on the spot there, hasn't he? I'm not even gonna lie, you call us old fanboys, but I actually think this could be the board that I use the most.
Ooh.
You've heard it here first.
Hey guys, so taking over from where Ricky left off, first impressions of this board have been pretty great so far. The first thing that I definitely noticed while standing on the board is that the deck is significantly shorter than what I'm typically used to riding. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something that you do notice if you're used to riding a board with a longer deck. Now that does have some advantages and negatives. For me, I definitely would prefer the deck to be a bit longer, but it's not something that made it inhibiting or horrible to ride. It's just something that would be nice to have a slightly longer deck. But having the shorter deck definitely makes this board a lot more maneuverable than any of the other boards that I'm used to typically riding, which was definitely a bonus. If you want to kind of like carve very sharp and tightly, this deck and the particular setup that we had with the wheels that it has on it definitely allow you to do that. And that leads really nicely onto the wheels. In my opinion, you guys know how we feel about cloud wheels. The wheels that come on this board are definitely how I kind of feel like cloud wheels should have been. I'm not saying these wheels are perfect, no wheels are perfect, but based on the size and the shape, the top speed that they allow you to get, and also the grip, it's a very, very nice middle ground between having a fully all-terrain wheel and a street wheel. You definitely have much more grip on the road with these wheels than you do with street wheels, and you have significantly more grip on the road with these wheels vs cloud wheels or cloudier wheels. So my general impressions of the board have been really, really good. One of the things that I've got to touch on is the general shape of the deck and the ride. The deck itself has a really nice concave, definitely not too aggressive, and it is nice for you to be able to kind of like position your feet while you're carving or turning quite aggressively. Now, when we look at the general ride, the deck, as Ricky said, isn't too flexible, but because of the wheels being made from rubber and not urethane, it's definitely smoother riding over rough ground or rough roads, definitely much better than what you would expect from cloud wheels, and also better than what you would expect from street wheels. The grip on these wheels isn't as aggressive as all-terrain wheels, but you're still able to do a good amount of carving, and as Ricky mentioned, you can definitely slide these wheels out as well. Now, when we look at the top speed was definitely surprising for me. I was able to hit without literally adjusting the trucks or messing with the bushings or anything like that, just jumped straight on the board out of the box, 32 miles an hour. And this wasn't kind of like the board peaking saying this is the top speed that you can get. It had more in the tank, which was quite concerning. I bottled it, had a bit of a chicken moment and had to pull back on the speed because I hadn't adjusted the bushings. They are very, very soft for what I would prefer to have. I definitely want, again, you hear this all the time, stiffer bushings in this board, but 32 miles an hour just straight off the bat was incredible. If I could have a board that could do this kind of speed consistently, that would just be the ideal board for me to ride, of course, with all-terrain wheels. Now, when we look at the actual torque, very quickly on points about the torque of the board, that's where this board, you see the compromise. You get the top speed with this board, but with the torque, it's definitely where you see the compromise. The torque isn't as aggressive as the other boards that we're used to riding, so it does take a little bit longer to get this board off the line, but once it gets moving, very, very quickly after it gets moving, you're able to kind of push on and accelerate past any of the other boards that we typically ride. If you're wondering if this board is quicker than the GTR with 107 street wheels, we were testing it out with a carbon in this instance. Hands down, the Onsra Black Carve is much quicker than the GTR carbon with 107 street wheels. Off the line, the GTR is quicker, but the second the Onsra picks up speed, it just blows past the GTR and doesn't kind of like hold speed with it, it just blasts past it. My GTR was topping out at somewhere between 29 and 30 miles an hour. The Onsra, with Ricky on it at that particular moment, who's a much lighter rider than me, which is worth mentioning, he was flat out. Even when we switched over and I was on the Onsra and he was on the GTR, it was essentially the same thing. Slow acceleration, but once it gets moving, the thing is insanely quick. Now with the remote, it's a very typical remote that we're used to seeing, nothing really unique there. I will mention that this remote doesn't have a deadman switch. As you guys know, I prefer remotes with deadman switches. I don't like them not to have that. It shows you the information that you'd expect a remote to see, battery life of the board in the remote in blocks on a battery cell rather than percentage. I'd prefer percentage because it's a little bit more accurate in my opinion, but the remote, it's just a standard remote, nothing really unique or special to touch on. Last points before we end this one is going to be on the way that the board looks. Exactly like Ricky said, I prefer if the wood was exposed and shown. I don't like the idea of painting wood. I think if it's a carbon-based board, then show the carbon. If it's a wood-based board, show the wood. I just think it looks pretty good. Excuse the pun, no pun intended over there. But the other point that I wanted to mention as well, which I just remembered about, is the sound that the board makes. It's not a bad sound, but it's loud. So if you're the type of person that wants to have a quiet, low keyboard, bear that in mind, because this board is one of the loudest boards that I've ridden. I actually like the sound it makes, and it's quite nice when you're blasting down roads or cycle paths because people on bikes or walking can hear you coming from quite a distance. But it's worth mentioning because I know this probably isn't something that everyone likes. But overall, really surprised with this board. The top speed caught me off guard. I don't know what the maximum speed is, we still need to mess around with it. But right now we're definitely sat somewhere between 34 and 35 miles an hour. Definitely, it's one of those nice instances where the speed that's been given on the website is actually realistic and is what the board can hit. But yeah, a lot more coming in the full review of this board where we can give you full details about range tests, speed, general battery life, if there's any sag. But so far we've not really picked up on any battery sag at all, except when you get really into the battery's life, sort of around the maybe say 20 to 30% mark. And of course, I don't know if you guys are going to ask this, but do you want to see this board put up against the Evolves, the GTR Carbon or the GTR Bamboo? Let us know in the comment section. But of course, much more content on this coming very soon. Keep watching, keep subscribing, and we will catch you in the next one. Take care, guys.